Story 1. This happened a long time ago. I was 10 years old at the time, but I remembered this incident for the rest of my life. I lived with my mother then. I didn't have a dad. My parents divorced. Mom worked as a salesperson in a convenience store and often stayed to work the night shift. On one of these nights, I had a snack as usual and went to bed to watch cartoons. Very soon, my eyes began to droop, and I slowly began to fall asleep. At that moment, I heard the dogs howling on the street. I felt somehow uneasy. I turned over to the other side, covered myself with a blanket. I tried to fall asleep, but that was not the case. The dogs seemed to have gone mad. They went crazy and howled even louder. Their howling began to irritate me, and I no longer tried to fall asleep. I quickly jumped out of bed and turned on the light. I sat and thought, why are they so loud? What's going on there? I have heard many times from adults that dogs howl for the dead. I felt scared. I called my mother at work, told her everything. She began to calm me down, saying that there was nothing scary here, she said. They talk like that. They say, don't be afraid of anything. Go to bed. I calmed down, went to bed and fell asleep very quickly. I don't know how long I slept, but I woke up because I heard some noise in the other room. I couldn't make out what it was. I quietly stood up, went to the door, opened it slightly, and looked out into the corridor. There was no one. The lights were turned off everywhere. Well, I think if it weren't for my mother, she wouldn't have been climbing in the dark. Then what is it? I slowly began to move along the corridor to the switch, and the noise continued. It already seemed that everything in the room was being turned upside down. Turning on the light, I felt more alert, went to the door of that room, but the noise died down. I couldn't hear anything, so I decided to open the door, pushed it with my foot. It opened, but no one was there. I went in, turned on the light. Everything was in its place. Nothing had been touched, but where did all the noise come from then? I stood there a little longer, turned off the light, turned to go out, when I heard someone sneaking from corner to corner behind me. Then I couldn't stand it anymore, screaming and rushed into my room, closing the door behind me. I couldn't sleep until morning. In the morning, my mother came, laughed at me when she heard my story, saying that I was making it up for myself and sent me to school. The next night, Mom was at home. We had dinner, washed up, and went to bed. This time, I slept with my mother. They just started to fall asleep, and suddenly the dogs howled again, like that night. I shuddered. I saw that my mother also began to stir in displeasure, and they howled more and more heart-rendingly. Mom couldn't stand it, got up and went to the window. Seeing nothing there, she went back to bed. We both lay there, staring at the ceiling. What kind of sleep is there? It was impossible to listen to. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a movement in the corner. It, or what it was, I don't know, begins to move from the corner towards the door. I screamed. My mother jumped up. She saw it too, turned on the light, but that's all gone. We were already really scared. We decided to sleep with the light on, but we couldn't fall asleep. We were turning from side to side. We lay there, complete silence. The dogs stopped howling. We both clearly heard a whisper in the corner. We could not make it out. I turned my head to that corner. I saw there was some kind of black spot in the corner. It was swaying from side to side and whispering quickly and indistinctly. Mom took my hand and said, "Don't scream, be quiet," and began to read the prayer, "Our Father." It began to whisper louder and fuss in the corner, then began to rush from side to side. It was terrible. I was petrified with horror, looked out from under the blanket and huddled closer to my mother. Mom continued to read the prayer. It began to hiss and throw herself on the bed. I squeaked. Mom did not stop reading. She only squeezed my hand harder. And then we heard a distinct female voice. It spoke in Mom's voice. "Hush, don't be afraid, don't scream." I was hysterical. I was screaming, crying. My mother covered my mouth with her hand and read. This creature appeared in one corner, then in another, and constantly whispered something and laughed. This horror continued until dawn. When it began to get light, it, squeaking and laughing, ran somewhere into a corner and disappeared. Mom brought the priest that same day. He blessed all the corners and told Mom to hang the icon in this corner. The next night, we heard an angry hissing. It was scratching against the wall. It felt as if it was pinned there by something and could not get out. Mom got up, we had holy water, and began to splash water in the corner and read a prayer. It hissed, and there was a TV on the table in that corner. Then it started beeping, and the TV fell to the floor. Mom read the prayer to the end, and everything disappeared. It didn't appear again. Story 2. Cat. A year ago, when we went to our grandmother, we took our cat with us. He was not neutered and was constantly walking. An hour before we left, my grandfather accidentally let him out into the street and he ran away. So we went home without him. 3 months later, we adopted another cat. Unlike the previous one, this one was outbred and thin, black color. And in order to avoid an incident like with the previous cat, we took him to the veterinarian and he had him castrated. The cat grew very quickly. My parents and I were surprised. He was growing day by day. Everyone thought it was whiskey, that it promotes the growth of my cat. But no, it's not whiskey. A couple of days ago, I found out for myself. It was a cloudy day. I was sitting at the computer as always. My parents had gone to the dasha and I was left alone with the cat. Suddenly it became dark, although it was day outside. I noticed this and with some fear I went to the window. It was pitch black. The lanterns were not on. Even at night this had never happened. Everything was black. With fear and trembling knees, I sat down on the bed and continued to stare at the laptop. Philip, my cat's name, was sleeping next to me at that time. This is perhaps the only thing that calmed me down, but in my heart I knew that he was just a cat, and if he became something otherworldly, then he couldn't help me in any way. I even felt that something would happen today. I sat with some fear playing on the computer for about a little over an hour. The darkness was still present outside the window, and the cat was still sleeping next to him. He didn't even wake up, although he doesn't sleep for more than 30 minutes at a time. My fear did not leave me, but during this time, it became less numerous. Suddenly I heard the window handle turning, as if someone was opening it. Less than a minute later, the window opened, and I heard footsteps. It couldn't be a person, since I live on the 4th floor, and how could he, being outside, turn handle? Top, top, top. This something was walking around the house looking for something. Like a typical teenager, I hid under the blanket in the hope that it would save me. Top, top, top. The steps are getting closer and closer. I can't help but think about it. Tears are welling up in my eyes. The light in my room has become dimmer. My cat was also sleeping motionless. Top, top. That's it. This something is standing behind the door, cold sweat and trembling throughout my body. Suddenly the door opens and it comes in. This thing looked like a person, almost. Absolutely white skin covered the bones. Instead of eyes, there were no black hollows of the nose and a black smile stretched almost from ear to ear. In some places on his body, there were black spots. It was terrible. I looked at it through the blanket. Suddenly, his skinny hand rose and grabbed me with the help of telekinesis. Black spots and numerous scratches began to appear on my skin. At that moment, my cat woke up and stood on the floor in front of me. His fur began to fall off him, and he turned out to be huge. He was 3 meters tall. The ceilings in my house are 3.45, and he looked like this creature, only he was completely black. That creature continued to smile. It was much smaller than my cat. The cat grabbed him by the waist and squeezed, but the creature did not let me go. When there was no living place left on my body, my pupils began to turn black. Lord, no, don't. I don't want to be the same, I thought at that moment, realizing that I was turning into this monster. Suddenly, it let go of me. Everything began to go away. I lay motionless on the floor, wondering when it would all end. Philip crushed this creature, and it burned right in the apartment. The cat took on its cat form and began to purr while licking my forehead. After some time, the street became lighter, and everything was filled with the smell of flowers and rot. I don't know where the smell of rot came from. I was no longer interested. After everything that happened, Philia began to show me his real appearance. He even talked to me. When I asked what it was, he told me that someone had opened a portal to the other world and forgot to close it, so they came for people to convert them into their own kind. There are almost no people left in my neighborhood. When I was looking for the smell of rot with my cat, we came across an abandoned building. There was a lot of human flesh,